I haven't really had the opportunity to talk about DreamWorks yet, so let's do that. I didn't grow up with DreamWorks the way I did with Disney, but I did see a lot of them, bad and good. Out of all the DreamWorks films that I've seen, my favorite has got to be How to Train Your Dragon. And what do you know? How to Train Your Dragon 2 is coming out this year, so I guess it's a good time to talk about it. Yeah, DreamWorks sure likes its franchises, what with the Kung Fu Panda films, the Madagascar trilogy, and the never-ending onslaught of Shrek sequels and spin-offs. But outside of the Shrek movies, DreamWorks actually has a decent track record when it comes to sequels, so I'm not too worried. But anyway, let's take a look at How to Train Your Dragon. Actually, before that, let's take a minute to talk about DreamWorks in general. I don't think I'm shocking anybody when I say that DreamWorks was basically started to capitalize on the success of Disney and Pixar. And I also don't think I'm breaking anybody's heart when I say that the rip-offs usually were not good. But when they got off of the rip-off train and started carving out their own identity, they started to get good. It became clear that kids liked them and they had money-making power to spare. This is right about the time when there was an onslaught of DreamWorks knockoffs coming from various places. It is classic supply and demand, and it's the same reason why there were so many Disney knockoffs in the 90s. It started out as Disney being the serious, drama-based company, while DreamWorks was the lighter, more comedy-based company, to the point of making a few almost parodies. But Disney has been leaning more towards comedy lately, and DreamWorks has been leaning more towards drama lately. Now they're more alike than people seem to notice. It started out as Disney versus DreamWorks, but then Disney dropped out and became DreamWorks versus Pixar, but then Pixar fell out and it seems like DreamWorks won, but then Disney came back and we're right back where we started. Both of these companies are great, but the main difference is that DreamWorks is more consistent, while Disney has the higher highs. But that's not to say that DreamWorks can't churn out an insta-classic. This finally brings us to How to Train Your Dragon. This review is going to make the assumption that you have seen How to Train Your Dragon, but just in case you haven't, here's a quick summary. It's basic kid movie plot number 3, out of like 5. Step 1. Our main character Hiccup, yes that's actually his name, is smart, nice, and has potential, but everybody hates him because he's different. Throw in a disappointed father for good measure. Step 2. He tries to become more like everybody else by trying to kill some dragons, local safety hazard, and food takers, but that just makes everyone hate him more because he's just a screw-up. Step 3. He finds his calling in secret and starts doing something against the norm. In this case, befriending and training a dragon. This dragon is named Toothless, a night fury, which is a notoriously dangerous dragon.
Huh. Toothless. I could have sworn you had... teeth.
Step 4. This stuff gives him the knowledge and skills that give him popularity back home, much to the disgust of obvious love interest. Generally, Step 5 is that he becomes full of himself, grows apart from Toothless, and something bad happens because of it, but thankfully that step is skipped in this film. Step 6. The secret is out, everybody hates him again. And then Step 7. He saves the day in a way that involves training dragons. Happy end. And that's really about it. The story and the characters are pretty standard. I mean, just look at the other kids that are Hiccup's age. They're all tokens of some kind. They have the fat white nerd, the annoying twins, the narcissistic coward, and the hottie who hates Hiccup because he gets popular really fast. Don't worry though, she comes around eventually.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just get me off of this thing.
I could go on about how these tropes relate to how the media influences how kids think and such, but since you're probably opening up a new tab right now, I'll just talk about one of them, the parent thing. Hiccup's father is a traditionalist. That automatically makes him uncool. He wants to continue legacies and he's an authority figure? Bogus, man! Now, while it is established that he does love Hiccup and ultimately wants what he thinks is best for him, it's also made clear that there is an unhealthy amount of not listening. Not listening can be funny, but when it's played for drama, it is always tedious, especially if only one side is doing it. When they both just sit down and have a serious conversation, it works. There's a scene where they discuss the dead mother, and it's done very well. But everything else is the same rebel versus traditionalist thing that we've seen so many times. For a comparison, let's also talk about Brave. I'm probably not the first one to notice that Brave has very many visual and thematic similarities to How to Train Your Dragon. And while I am nicer to this movie than most other critics, I do admit that this film does have flaws, definitely more than How to Train Your Dragon. However, there is one element that I do believe Brave does a lot better, and that's the relationship between parent and child. While at first it does seem that it's the same thing, freedom versus structure, at the end it turns out to be more complicated than that. Generally, the parent learns something from the kid, but in Brave, they learn from each other. Merida realizes that diplomacy and reason are often necessary, and the mother realizes that force does have to be used sometimes. Neither of them is completely right. They teach each other something new, they grow closer, and they both become better people because of it. In How to Train Your Dragon, it's more the standard fare. Hiccup was right, his father was wrong, and Hiccup becomes a hero martyr complete with a missing leg. That's not nearly as challenging. But to be fair, How to Train Your Dragon doesn't really do any of these cliches badly, it just doesn't really do anything new with them. However, all of that doesn't really bother me, because the focus of the film isn't really the plot. It is, as it should be, the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless. After all, it is both the title and the poster. It's also the best part of the entire movie. While Hiccup is a good character and makes a good everyman, the thing that makes these scenes so good is Toothless. The people behind Toothless deserve a standing ovation because they hit a bullseye. Let's start out with the design. Well, the Night Fury is introduced as a malevolent, unstoppable force that isn't really conveyed in the design. He's not a terrifying monster like the Monstrous Nightmare or an adorable creature like that tiny dragon they use as a one-off joke. He can be cute and he can be menacing, but he has a very neutral default mode. I also like how he doesn't really emote that much. He has limited facial expressions, and while he has big eyes, they aren't that expressive. It's hard to tell what Toothless is thinking, and all you can see in his face is weird calculating. That's how it is for most animals. They have blank expressions that make it hard to say what they're thinking. All of this makes Toothless seem more like a creature of instinct than one of emotions. I'm not saying that Toothless doesn't have feelings, he clearly does, but the movie doesn't try to humanize him. Now, I do know that Maximus and Sven prove that humanized animals can be both hilarious and endearing, but that strategy wouldn't have worked too well here. Both Hiccup and Toothless do things that the other doesn't understand, and they have to work together to take down the communications barrier. This is why the movie is called How to Train Your Dragon. It's a process, and there are risks in that process. It also makes the fact that nobody has thought of domesticating dragons before this make a lot more sense. This is why this is such a striking and surprisingly adult movie. It discusses and analyzes things that most other kids' films do not. It's also of note to point out that there actually is a supplied reason as to why the dragons come and steal the food of the Vikings. It's because there's this one big gigantic uber dragon who wants them to bring him food so that or else he'll just eat them himself. That does make the moral of this film kind of easy. I mean, imagine if they were just pests stealing food, just animals. That would make the wrap-up a little bit more complicated, but you know what, that isn't really that big of a problem, because the moral is still told pretty well. Continuing with the list of things in this movie that are done well, we also have the animation, which is absolutely spectacular. I might make some people mad here, but DreamWorks usually has better animation than Disney does, and this is no exception. We got the designs of the dragons, which are very creative and have cool ways to characterize them. There are the flying scenes, with the cinematography that is just excellent. This is very high on the list of films I regret that I didn't see in theaters, and even higher on the list of films that I regret that I didn't see in 3D. Plus, there's the film's masterful use of colors, which is used to set the moods wonderfully. And I also enjoy this film's dialogue.
Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile.
While cliched and often predictable, this film definitely has a sort of sincerity to it. So, with everything considered, how is How to Train Your Dragon? I would say that it is almost certain that a kid would love it, and extremely likely that an adult would love it. There are flaws, but what is done well is done extremely well. I've seen shots taken at DreamWorks all the time, but this seems to be one of their films that just never seems to be in the firing zone. This film is a testament to how good DreamWorks can be, and I really hope that the sequel proves to be a worthy follow-up.